frequent flyers will know that we are big fans of the science fiction series Babylon 5, as well as cult and genre cinema in general terms. Now, I'm very happy to welcome back a guest that has navigated both of these worlds with constant reinvention. Actress, stunt performer, writer, events organizer, business owner, and bon vivant extraordinaire, Patricia Tallman. Welcome back to the show, Pat.
Thank you. I love that. That makes me sound very productive.
Well, hey, I can't even get to the gym, so I don't know how you do all of this stuff, quite frankly. But when we last spoke, probably going back 18 months or so now, you were preparing to come here to New Zealand for one of the Middle Earth trips that you offer with Quest Retreats. Now, obviously, since then we've endured a global pandemic. Now, I'm just wondering, as an events organizer in the fandom space, you very quickly pivoted with B5 events. Now, I was just wondering if you could just tell us about how the last 18 months has been for you, both personally and professionally, and a little bit about B5 events as a reaction to this.
Yes, I mean, New Zealand's one of my favorite places to be, and so I used the royal we. I had led a really great trip with great people, and we had so much fun, and the New Zealanders were amazing, and I couldn't wait to do it again. That's part of what I'm trying to do with Quest Retreats is to create these amazing experiences and do all this exploration and find the best of the best, the most interesting places you wouldn't be able to find if you didn't have a guide, kind of thing. So, and then to be able to go back and do it again. Once I put in all this work and I invest this time and money into finding these amazing vendors, then to be able to go back and do it again. Well, I was researching one in Scotland with my now fiance, and we were there. I got to the UK at the end of February. I did a convention in the beginning of March. Then I flew to Pittsburgh from London, did a convention, flew back to London, and was on my way up to Edinburgh when we were noticing the world was shutting down. And I'm thinking, I just wanted to get back to my fiance and figure it out from there. I didn't want to get locked down in the US and he's locked down in the UK. So we ended up in lockdown together in Scotland. And, as we were all just sort of blown away by what was happening and watching the world shut down, trying to figure out how we were all going to manage it. We were in Scotland staying in Airbnbs that luckily were still open. The hotels all shut. My flight was canceled, but these Airbnbs were really great. The NHS in the UK was encouraging those that had standalone rentals. So that was their own entrance. They didn't interact with the family household. They were completely safe to stay open for healthcare workers and essential workers and people like myself who might have been a stranded traveler. And so thank goodness for this, we were able to, hunker down for about 3 weeks before they finally rescheduled.
That must have been terrifying. I mean, not being able to get on a plane. I mean, that's a pretty apocalyptic scenario right there.
It was really unreal. And honestly, we could have gone to the dark side with it, but instead we just went, we're in Scotland. We're in the Highlands.
There's worse places to be stuck at the end of the world, isn't there?
Right? And it's March, April. And so it was spring. So we had all kinds of weather, but we were prepared. And, we couldn't go in any place or on an excursion, but we could drive and walk around outside. And they were saying you could go for walks. You couldn't just go shopping. Well, all the shops were shut anyway, but you could do things like get out in nature. They didn't shut that down. So we just kind of took it as a magical experience and trusted that we would get back when we got back. And luckily, the way both of our lives are structured, my son was, he's an adult, and he and his girlfriend took care of our house. And, we were okay. And my heart was breaking for the stress I could see online everywhere. It's like, oh my God, I hope everyone's okay. It was really scary to watch people get sick and some people die. I've lost family members to COVID. So it wasn't, this was deeply serious stuff, but we were really grateful that we were okay and that we were in a beautiful place. So to continue, I know there's stories out there. We're going to hear stories for the rest of our lives about what happened to people during COVID. But to continue with what we were talking about, I realized really quickly that my travel business was at a standstill, and all these wonderful adventures I had planned had to go on hold for at least 2 years, because for me, it takes me probably a year to plan a thing, and then it takes me a year to market it. Because if I'm asking Mike to come with me on my next trip, well, Mike needs to plan time off work. He needs to put a budget aside so he can pay for this thing, buy his tickets, his airline tickets. You need time to plan a trip that's going to take you out of your own world for 10 days to 2 weeks. And my New Zealand trip was 16 days. And then you've got to plan travel on either end of that, because we lose a day, gain a day kind of thing. We do that time traveling.
And that's the great thing about these Quest retreat trips is, I mean, I've lived in New Zealand for 6 years now, and I still probably only do, and I'm a geek, obviously, right? I do the show. And I love Lord of the Rings. That was not one of the things that drew me here, but certainly a fringe benefit. But I probably only done about a third of the things that somebody would do in a fortnight on because of how concise that trip is. And you're absolutely right that obviously everybody has their stories, but I mean, so when you had this realization and you were thinking, gosh, my business, how is this gonna operate, what was your next step then? Were you like everybody else scrambling to understand the online space or how to pivot? What was your process at that point professionally?
I feel so fortunate, because I have been, like you said so kindly, I've been reinventing myself for the last, for maybe always in a particular way, but really for the past 10 years. And so that meant I had to get online. I had to learn new skills. I had to take classes. I had to hire coaches. I've really done a lot of personal development in order to do this, because I realized I wanted to have more agency over my career. And if I had taken the energy and the concentration and the all my resources that I put into my acting career, if I had put that into any other career, I would be a millionaire by now. I would have this robust, I would be able to retire now. I'm in my 60s. So I just got really sick of other people having power and me not having any power and having anything to show for my efforts. So I just, started to make some changes to see, now what would I love? First of all, it was kind of grieving for this career that I had worked on my whole life, always ever wanted to be was an actor, and grieving that so that I could move on to find something else that would be at least as fulfilling, if not more. And that process has been really interesting. And I share that with my Patreon group right now. We're working on that. Like, how do you reinvent yourself? How do you find what's going to give you joy and sustain you in life? How do you do that? I learned how to do that. So when COVID hit and we locked down, I went, I can't sit here. I have got to pivot, and got to pivot fast. What do we all miss? Community, each other, friendship, conventions. We're nerds. We miss each other. Online events. Bam. I put together that first one in 10 days. And
if I could, sorry to interrupt, but I've got to say, I'm not blowing smoke here, but it does feel like you were somewhat of a trailblazer there, because that type of event, I mean, I know that you put together the first B5 event very quickly, and that was before any of the larger conventions. And we've got Armageddon here in New Zealand that I know you've been part of in the past.
Love Armageddon.
And they pivoted as well, but your event was, credit where it's due, one of the first ones out the gate.
Thank you. And we were so enormously successful with that first one, with Mira, Claudia, and myself, Claudia Christian, Mira Ferland from Babylon 5. It was just an explosion, and it was so great. I thought, okay, I'm hearing this is a yes from our people. And then I did the next one with Billy and Bill Mooney and Peter Jurassic. And again, but by then, even just a month later, there were more and more online events. So it started to get harder to break through the noise for people to find us. And it's been a really interesting 18 months in watching this, and how you have to keep tap dancing, because that's the thing about being an entrepreneur. I'll just share this with all of you who are out there like me, trying to see how do we, and you never get settled, and you can never sit back in your armchair. That's just never going to happen. Accept it, embrace it, love it. What you're going to do is people are going to copycat you and just take it as flattery, and nobody's going to be you. You were the first, you were great. And also then you always have to kind of add and pivot, add and adjust some more, and we talk about that in my group too, just like, how do you do that? How do you keep vibrant? How do you stay relative? How do you stay relevant and keep people excited and engaged with you when there is so much out there? There's so much noise out there. I'm still doing it. In fact, Mike, I'll probably be in touch with you in a month or two, because I've got a whole new website coming out. I've got a whole new way I'm going to do this because of COVID. It's different. The world's opening back up. I have to pivot again.
During these sort of dark times, which we're hopefully coming out of now, we turn to entertainment for distraction and nostalgia and the escapism and the comfort, I suppose, that come with those things. How do you cope during these times? What do you turn to as the sort of the light?
Oh, I love that you asked that, because that's what I ask my people too. I ask the celebrities that come and join us on B5 events, what keeps your heart going? Honestly, I got a lot out of the events, working with my friends, asking them to come in and then commune with the community, as it were. The Patreon group is another one. I thought we've got time now, and I'm using Patreon like a membership community. And I'm not a technical expert by any sense, and so I get hindered by tech a lot. And I have to work with get somebody to help me. I have to hire people to help me, and I've been wanting to do a membership site for a long time. Finally started to see, well, maybe there was something I could use here. And I even talked to Patreon many times, like, this is how I want to use it. And they said, well, we're really not set up for that. And I said, I don't care. I don't care. Cut the crap. I'm just going to, tell me what you can do, and I'll do whatever. I'll fix the rest. And that's kind of what we've done. So we use a combination of different platforms to keep us as a community moving forward, and people can join at whatever tier they wish, wherever they feel like they want to contribute. And the upper tiers are working on more personal development, and we're going to talk about career and finances. We're talking about health and fitness. We just finished a whole 42-day program on making your life more magical. And if you're not into that, that's cool. I have like a book club. We have a gaming track. We have Monday meditations, if you want to do that. And then I have available to them folders of stuff that they can watch or participate in, or however you wish to use it. And I've also, so that's been, you can imagine that's an enormous amount of time. That's how I've been filling my time. That, and I'm home in lockdown with my fiance, my son, and his girlfriend. So we have our own family pod, and learning how to live together 24/7, which has not been my life, I think, ever. And I know a lot of people are like that.
It sounds like the concept of a sitcom waiting to happen.
Yes, very much. We did great. We did amazingly great. So that, and being in my house, not leaving my house, we all have had those, all of us are like, wow, my relationship with my space, my home, and how I share that space. That was really trippy and interesting. I'm sure that, like many of you out there, we're all online in new ways. I've got different groups that I communicate with to help keep me connected. I created something for my family so that we could have a monthly group chat, which has been interesting and really nice in a way. We're actually more in touch than we have been in a really long time, because we've made it a point to be on an hourly conversation or 2-hour conversation together.
As far as like what happens next, are you looking at B5 events becoming a face-to-face thing, or are you going to keep that exclusively like an online thing?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up. One of the things I would love to hear from you yourself, Mike, and from your listeners, I would love to know what people would like from me. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that because I do thrive on the road, that I would do, yes, I love the in-person things. I have done that before where I'll do a day, or I'll be like in London, let's all meet up, do a haunted walking tour, and then go to the pub, together. Let's do that. And a group will show up and we'll go do that. And I did a Harry Potter potions class.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
It was so fun. It was so fun. So yeah, I want to do more of that. I'm thinking, depending on where I end up in the world, I can let that country know, okay, we're all meeting here. Who wants to do it? And maybe more formal, I'll fix it so that everyone's taken care of. But I think that would be really fun. I don't know. What do you think?
What I was thinking was also, actually, if I may,
Yeah.
usually I do the how can people contact you thing at the end of the show, but I think sometimes people, tune out at the end.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you could just tell people where they can find you online here at this point in the show, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I have there's a couple ways, but you can use this email, Pat Tallman newsletter, just Pat, Tallman newsletter @gmail. Just email me there. It could take me a few days to get to all of it, but I do get back, and let me know if you've got those. What I want to know is what you would do. I don't need ideas. Are easy. There are a million ideas. I have tons of ideas. Implementation, practicality. That's where that's where the rubber meets the road. So what I want to know is what you would do, what you would want to do. Things like the potion class, things like a walking tour, things like, would you want to do an afternoon seminar with me talking about some of these topics, doing a whole workshop on making money and creating your own business, or writing a book, or how to get out of your limiting beliefs, how to make your life rock. I love those topics. That's what I've been doing for 10 years, reading constantly, working with coaches, putting together my own programs. So I would love to kind of get on my feet and work with people in a one-on-one situation with a small group.
Well, the challenge has been issued, listeners.
Yes, put it out there.
We want to know what you would like to do, whether that be online or in person. So what I wanted to bring up was I was very lucky to have Mira Furlan on the show not long before she passed, and I know that, as you mentioned, obviously you were still in contact with her, the event that you did with her and Claudia. I was just wondering if you could give us your thoughts on Mira as
Mira,
a person.
I can try. I mean, Mira, Claudia, and I are really good friends, and we had a lot of plans. I was just with Mira in February in the UK, and I was supposed to go see her in a play in Croatia when they got shut down with the pandemic, and she went home first, and she was so worried about me getting home. I said, look, I'm in Scotland. I'm fine. It's okay. I'm not suffering. Believe me, we'll be fine. We'll just go with whatever happens. And we had a lot of plans. She was working on her book, and we were talking about her book launch. We got her new website up. We were getting her socials together. She was going to teach a yoga class for my class platform. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, God. How do we make sense of these times? And when you lose people so young, and with Mira, first we thought it was COVID, and it turned out to be West Nile, which is even more random and, just useless. What the hell? And we're all in shock and grief around that. And so I was just talking to Peter Jurassic before I hopped on with you from Babylon 5, and we're getting together in LA, and I know it's going to be powerful. It's going to be emotional and powerful, and we all really need it. But so yeah, I don't know, Mike. It's horrendous. It's a waste. She was such a bright light, so beautiful. I mean, just this natural, gorgeous person.
One of the all-time great smiles.
Oh, and her talent, just this, she worked so hard, and she never took it for granted, but she just had this gift and she worked on it and gave it. And she was writing, and she, her intellect was, she was so smart and so well read and interested in everything and everybody, a powerful example of how to be yourself, stay interested in everyone, and never having it affect her in a, it never made her, she was always so perfectly authentic, is what I'm trying to say. And just never was off kilter with her authenticity, no matter how messy she felt about it, or emotional that it made her, or whatever she felt, and just was honest about it. And I take such inspiration from that, because when a person is that comfortable in their own skin, I don't know about you, but when you're around someone who's just really themselves, it helps you to be really yourself. It's permission to not, I don't know, to feel safe in being real, because they're being real. And when you're with people who are not comfortable with themselves, you can feel uncomfortable too, because you're like, well, I guess there's something, your brain is saying not to trust. We're not safe. Not that they're going to do anything, but it's just, it's like there's this vibe of, we can't be ourselves here. And that for me is what Los Angeles is mostly like, So when I got to be with Mira, it was such a relief just to be myself. And I know she wanted me to be myself. So I have a lot of friends here on Hawaii who are very much themselves, completely unique. We don't all see the same thing the same way, but they completely embrace me and I embrace them, and I just want the best for them. It's something that we're missing a lot these times. Everyone's so politically divided, and it's become your identity instead of just something we talk about every once in a while. No. It's your identity. Cut it out, guys. We're all so much more than
being
that.
able to sort of, I suppose, lower your guard is kind of what you're talking about here.
Okay.
And the sort of the anxiety drop off with that. And I think that it's interesting with yourself and Mira and Claudia, because I rewatched Babylon 5 relatively recently with my wife, who'd seen it for the first time. And we were surprised to see how immediately the show, first, it passes the Bechdel test, and we've got, there's a moment where, and there's no attention is drawn to this moment, but there's a moment where yourself, Claudia, and Mira are in a scene, and my wife turned around to me and went, "There are no men in this scene," and you guys weren't talking about men. You had a problem that you were dealing with. Was that something that you were aware of when you were making Babylon 5, or was it just something that was so organic that it wasn't undiscussed and unthought about, the fact that you guys were, leading?
What I noticed, so Claudia's 10 years younger than me, right? And Mira and I think Mira had a couple of years on me. So she's maybe 2 years older. So Mira and I were in one generation. Claudia is really on the other generation. And when we've talked about this together, what we found was that Mira and I had a similar experience, in that it was very weird when women were just treated as people and not as objects or set decoration or being objectified, and right? And Mira and I were so used to being objectified that, yeah, we hated it, and it causes this depression and low level anxiety that you battle your whole life. But it's expected, right, on a certain level. Not so much today, but still in the 90s for sure, when we were shooting B5. And Claudia had already come into a newer generation of women who had different ideas. And the roles that Mira and I had played had influenced this generation already. And I didn't really know that, or was aware of that Barbara in Night of the Living Dead, 1990, that character so influenced so many actresses, saying, "Oh yeah, that's yeah," and it had become more and more already.
in the film circles I move in, your character in Night of the Living Dead is comparable, uttered in the same breath as Gina Davis in The Longest Goodnight, Sigourney, Linda Hamilton. It's definitely, you're definitely part of that club.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love. I can look back at that and feel really good about it, and how much I wanted to be. I wanted to be the adventure guy. I wanted to be that person, and it was always a man. So I loved Indiana Jones. Who didn't love like shows like Indiana Jones? And I used to watch Errol Flynn movies, swashbuckling movies. I loved that stuff, but you didn't see the girls picking up a sword. But I was a swordswoman. And I was in stage combat and became a stunt person. I doubled Gina in Long Kiss Goodnight. I was her stunt double. So, I have always wanted to do that stuff. And then I got to be Barbara in Night of the Living Dead. And even when we were doing it, I didn't really see her as an adventure hero or anything like that. I just saw her as a woman trying to deal with, talk about, the pandemic is extraordinary times. A woman trying to deal with something extraordinary, just rising to the occasion. And every person you could relate to, just a normal person faced with this extraordinary circumstance that then has to decide, who are you? How are you going to handle this? What are you going to do when everybody else is melting down all around them?
The film we're referring to, the 1990 Night of Living Dead, produced by Romero and directed by Tom Savini. Now, I understand you've got an event coming up with Tom Savini. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, but also tell us a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about how you first met Tom and your sort of early experiences working with him.
Tom came to, I was an acting student at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. Tom's from Pittsburgh, and he came into CMU to do some, teach makeup for actors and also take some classes. So he was in some of my stage combat classes and our physical classes, and he became like best friends with my boyfriend at the time. And so I saw a lot of Tom because of, my boyfriend. And then right after graduation, I auditioned for a movie. I'd moved to New York, auditioned for a movie called Night Riders, and got cast in it. Came back to Pittsburgh to do it, and it was a George Romero film. So I'm back in Pittsburgh, and Tom's playing a leading role in this movie as an actor. And we were all in this little hotel in the middle of Western Pennsylvania for, is that where he shot it? Yeah. For like 3 months over a summer, and shot this extraordinary George Romero film starring Ed Harris. And Tom is working opposite Ed in a lot of scenes. It was just a really tight-knit group, and I loved it. First time I was ever in front of a camera. I'm 21 years old. And that's, I think, where we all got to know each other on a whole other level. Tom and a bunch of other people, Ken Foray, you may know, actor from, all the Romero films, and Ed Harris, and just, bunch of awesome people. So, and then after that, Tom actually hired me. He hired me as a stunt woman. He hired me as an actor. And then years later, he hired me to do, I think we did we worked together a couple films. I was doing stunts, and he was doing makeup effects. And then he hired me for Night of the Living Dead. And he just said, I knew you had the physicality for who I wanted Barbara to morph into. So, but I had to audition against other people. I wasn't, they just didn't hand me the part. I had to audition and wait stressfully to find out whether or not I got the part.
Did you ever watch the film with a public audience? What was it like? And if you did, what was it like seeing yourself in such a central role on this mainstream released at the multiplex film? I mean,
the time I remember most profoundly was when was this? It was we did a convention in Calgary, Canada, and it was Tom, Bill Moseley, Tony Todd, myself. Was it the four of us? Was there anybody else? I think it was the four of us from the film. And what they did was they rented an old movie house, and and the movie house played Night of the Living Dead for the weekend, as kind of like a late night thing. And so we did see it for the convention came out, we filled the theater. And I hadn't seen it for a really long time. I want to say like 20 years, you know, I hadn't seen it. And I was really happy because I felt like not only did the movie stand up, and the effects in the day in 1990 were violent and gory and horrific, but now we're so inundated with that stuff. It was like, it was good. The effects were good, but they weren't, you know, what's the word? They weren't so shocking as maybe they were back in the day, but they were effective because it was realistic. And the scares were organic. There wasn't any tricky stuff going on. It was all story, right? So the scares were story, the fright, there was a lot of tension build up, and it really well done. And I was so proud of being a part of that film. And then I thought, I was watching my character like, oh, look at her. You know? I was kind of proud of that girl, you know, that I was. And I'm honored that my youth was captured in film in such a nice role.
It's there forever now.
It's there, and I'm just so honored that I have that experience. And I thought everybody, all the acting was solid. You know, I was like, wow, good work, all of it. It was good. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. That was
but yeah. So you've got this conversation, this hangout with Tom coming up. I was just wondering if you could just tell our listeners how they can find out about that and how they can access that.
Oh, I thank you again. Yeah, so Tom is coming on to do a B5 event. And like I said, I'm going to be recreating B5 events. But and then Claudia Christian's coming in July. But what we're going to do is with the B5 events, our format is we have an open house for an hour before we start the main event. And the open house is for and it's moderated. There's a moderator there, but it's for the fans to hang out like we could do at a convention. So you meet your friends, you chat, you geek out a little bit, sort of get settled, go get your Coke, come back, kind of getting settled. And then Tom starts, we'll start with his Q&A, and I get everybody to ask questions, and I try to put the questions in sort of a format where we touch on topics together about his career. And then after about 45 minutes or an hour, we'll go into what I call the spotlight. And the spotlight's what you and I were talking about before, where we talk about like what really gets you excited, what keeps you going. And what Tom has done is he's taken his phone and walked around his house and created a video that we'll start with around his house, talking about his life, in a more personal way, because Tom's had an extraordinary life.
Oh, he has.
About in a minute. And then we're going to talk more personal. I can talk to him as somebody who's known him for 45 years, right? That's a long fucking time, kids, and I can talk to him. I can say things. I can call him on bullshit. We've been through so much. We have a shorthand, and we'll draw it out a little bit, and we'll get personal. And then after that, which first of all is mind blowing. And then after that, we have a VIP party where a small group of folks, like 10 or 12 people, can hang out in a Zoom room with him and talk one-on-one. And I make sure every single person talks to him. You can ask him a question, you could tell him a story, you can, get into a conversation with him. And then everybody gets replays. So if you've bought the main event, you get a replay to that later, or you'll get the replay to the VIP party separately if you're a VIP. And so I try to make it totally accessible, even if you can't join in that time zone. For instance, it'd be really early for Kiwis to show up. But you could show up when you want, and then you'll still get a replay, so you can see whatever you missed, if that works out for you, and that's always available to you. So we also have a program. We put together a downloadable program with pictures and his bio and links, and we try to make it as much like a real show.
I was about to say, the thing that I'm loving about what I'm hearing is that I think everybody enjoys a different aspect of a convention. There's so many different sort of nooks and crannies, and for some people like to just stay in the bar, just catch up with people. Some people. So it sounds like you're replicating all of those different sort of aspects of a convention.
We try. We have like a Discord channel going all the time, so people can chat behind the scenes. For the Patreons, I actually have another camera set up that's a behind the scenes. You get to see me freaking out doing what I'm doing on my messy office, and I talk to them too. I'm as a moderator right now for Tom. I'm doing the interviews, so I won't be as active in the behind the scenes as sometimes I am. But it's just I try to give everybody a window, and I hope that there's a lot of value in this, because I charge $40 for a ticket, and if you want a VIP, it's $150, and that includes the general admission. But the replays, we put the replays up in the store, but they're $50 for a replay. So you might as well get the $40 ticket, and then get the replay. I pay my guests. They get half of my gate. Whatever we bring in, they get half of it. I pay all the fees out of my end, my Zoom license, my assistants, all the stuff and I don't really make any money doing this. I'm okay with that if it's serving a purpose, but that's why I'm revamping it now, because I'm feeling like it's been really hard to reach people, or maybe people aren't as interested in this anymore. And that's cool. I just need to know so that I can make my plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also work in the events space a little bit as well, and I think we are very much going through we had a transition 18 months ago, and we're on the wave of another transition at the moment.
It is. It is. So how do we serve?
But I think that, I think people might be a little zoomed out, but at the same time, you know what? If I was going to go on a Zoom call for somebody, aside from Patricia Tallman, of course, it would be Tom Savini. So I think that's a really great one to do. And also, there's a lot of people out there who wouldn't have access to somebody like Tom or yourself through a face-to-face convention anyway, due to geography and all of these kind of things. So what I'll do, listeners, is I'm going to put all of the information about this event on the show notes for this podcast, which I'm hoping to post today. So if you just click on the links on your phone, it'll take you through, and we'll put this out on social medias as well. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, that I meant to ask you about last time we spoke, is your book, Pleasure Thresholds.
Yes.
Now, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the book, but also, obviously, as a Babylon 5 fan, I understand the reference the title's coming from, but I just thought I'd get a kick out of hearing you explain that to our listeners and viewers. And also tell us a little bit about the book.
I will. Thank you again for the lead-in. B5events.com. You could go there right now and check out the tickets. And the event with Tom Savini is June 19th. That's this coming Saturday for those of us, if you're listening to this in this week. So, and the replay will be up in the store. Okay, the book. Thank you. And the book is on the store. There's a b5events.com/store. So in there, we've got autographs of some of my guests, and then the book is in there. And the book is called Pleasure Thresholds, Patricia Tallman's Babylon 5 memoir. And I wrote a book about this, the 5 years I was on Babylon 5 and everything else that was happening in between. Because what I had when I did the pilot, and then when I started the series, there was a couple-year gap. And I did some of the biggest shows I've ever been on, like Jurassic Park. I was Laura Dern's stunt double, and I did Star Trek Generations, the first movie of the next generation. And there, I had some really wonderful opportunities that I talk about in the gap of the book. And I talk about Night of the Living Dead a little bit because Joe Straczynski, who cast me in Babylon 5, saw Night of the Living Dead and created Lita, my character, in that. He really loved that, and he created Lita, and then he was hoping I would be good enough in the audition to get the part. So thank God I got the part. So Pleasure Thresholds refers to a character named Jakar. Jakar has a distinctly reptilian appearance, and my character is a telepath on the ship's telepath. And his people, the Narn people, don't have telepaths. They want to breed with telepaths to get that genetic line. And he's offering me a deal to have to use to, and the way he says it in the beginning, I'm not clear on what you want you want to buy some of my eggs? I mean, what are you talking about? What are you, you know, I don't say that, but I'm just confused. And plus my character is like brand new to the station, and this is her first professional job. So she's like, what? What's happening? And he says, would you like to be conscious or unconscious during the mating? I would prefer conscious, but I don't know what your pleasure threshold is. And he's all Brad Pitt in that moment. It is all very, it's hilarious. He's so awesome. So that's and then at the end of the series, I have a couple of last scenes with Shakar. One of them, I come to his quarters and say, oh, you once asked me about my pleasure thresholds. I just recently found out I don't have one. and he's like,
I think what that exchange in the pilot is basically saying is, this is not Star Trek.
Right. This is not what you think it's going to be. And then Jakar and Lita do, and the end of the series, we do go off together to have their own adventures, which is perfect.
What were those scenes with Andreas like? He must have been an absolute treat to work with.
He's a treat. That's the exact right word.
Okay.
He's just like you would hope he would be. He's this darling, charming, consummate professional, just a lovely human being. I miss Andreas so much. He was very special, and just, I mean, exactly who you'd hope he'd be. That's who he was. You were never disappointed.
And the book is it available as an ebook as well, or is it only is it physical?
No, right now, because of COVID, I am fulfilling the orders out of my own home so I can autograph everything. So all the books are autographed. And, you know, once we're back to normal, I am just going to have it on Amazon for print on demand, however they do. So it won't come autographed. So if you're interested in getting an autograph book, please get it now. It's $35 plus shipping. And
even better. Now, I'm just wondering and it's a bit of a selfish question for asking this one, but I was wondering what your initial fan reactions were like. And I don't know if you covered this in the book, but I was at the convention that you guys did in 1997 in Blackpool in the UK, which was kind of at the peak of Babylon 5 hysteria. I think it was around season 4. Were you prepared for that? What was that like, getting that kind of reaction?
No, I don't think any of us were prepared for that. It was remarkable. Oh my God. I was so exhausted by the end of that too, just drained completely, but so grateful for the support. I think you were right. We didn't know if we had season 5 yet. And it was at Blackpool that those contracts started to arrive. A lot of
shit was hitting the fan.
That's right.
Apparently, wasn't it?
That's right. Luckily, my contract was already settled, because my contract was 4 up till year 5, just in case there was a year 5. That was the original plan. So I had nothing to worry about it, but it was very stressful for a lot of people. Like, I need to negotiate this contract. They want it back in 24 hours. We're in the UK. How do we? It was crazy. No, that was an extraordinary time, wasn't it? I'm so glad you were there. I mean,
it felt like the peak of the fandom in many ways.
Sure.
Like it was at the peak of excitement in the narrative. I think it was just a great kind of coming together and celebration of what you guys were all doing. And it was only after the fact that we found out that all of these things were happening behind the scenes. But yeah, you must have slept well that night, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that it definitely was in the peak of things. And I'm so grateful I got to go through that. And I hope I get to go through something like that again. I hope I'm on a show that's either science fiction. Well, no, science fiction. Let's get specific. I would love science fiction. Because now I have so much under my belt as far as knowledge and how to serve the fans and how to take care of myself and to make sure that my energy.
And that's a huge part of the gig, isn't it?
It is, because you need to put out all this energy, and it some of it comes back, sure, but it's not. Especially if you're traveling, there's a time lag, and there's your body's taking a beating, but it really is very special, and I hope that I get to experience that again. But if I don't, I've had that, so that was good.
A lot of people are discovering Babylon 5 now due to the fact that it's been made available in high definition for the first time. And I'm just wondering, what would you say to younger viewers who are coming to that show now and maybe don't fully contextually understand its place within the history of TV?
That is something that us old folks get to have, because is we've seen the history, the evolution of when it wasn't cool. Science fiction wasn't cool at all, and we were all beat up and shoved into lockers when we were in school. And now it's like we run the world. Nerds run the world. But I don't know how they would to get that kind of depth of the experience of what B5 was able to accomplish, and that is really due to Joe Straczynski as the writer creator. And he just got it. He knew. And let's see, I don't know, Mike, what would you say? What would you say to people? I was on the inside, so I feel, it was different for me being behind the scenes than it is for you to have had it.
I think it was a subversion. I think there was a subversiveness to Babylon 5. I mean, people talk obviously a lot about the fact that it was novelistic. But I think the fact that when it started, it felt so much initially like a Star Trek or a Stargate, but then it unraveled those things and subverted those things to such a degree. But I think the other legacy as well is just that it survived, that it was a scrappy show. And I think that's an important part of its legacy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we really had to fight for every season. And that what Joe did, there's a couple things that Joe did that I think were extraordinary. One was he came from the fan base, so he understood it. He was on the early days of the internet, where he was already engaged in fandom and had a relationship, and people trusted him because they knew him, they watched him grow and develop this show and heard about it. And then he brought us along to go to conventions and talk about it, and to keep talking about it, so that people season after season after season would still see the actors out there talking about the show, promoting the show. That's what kept us going, was saying to the fans from a stage, please write in, please tell them you want us, please let them know. And the fans did. And that was something that was new to entertainment in those days. That's how early days in the 90s, right? So, and the other thing was that Joe wrote that five-year arc. He had a plan, so that there were callbacks in season 2 to season 1. There were callbacks from season 4 to season 1, season 2, right? Characters that never did and then came back. They were just really intense. And so J.J. Abrams, Rockne O'Bannon, a lot of these creators, I'm so sorry about all this, talk about how Joe influenced them to create their shows because of the 5-year arc, which people poo-pooed and said you couldn't do it. No one would stick with it. No one's interested.
So the fear was that people might miss an episode, but I mean that now seems it's like such a antiquated kind of thing. That you mentioned all the stuff that Joe did. Sort of, the show itself was visionary, but all of the engagement that he was doing online. And I think it's interesting just to sort of, to tie a bow on things, that in some ways that's what you're doing now. You're creating those connections, and you're sort of like fostering those relationships, and fans will meet each other who would not have known each other if it wasn't for the work that you're doing. So I just want to thank you again so much for your time, and say what a pleasure it is having you on, as it always is. And if you could just finish up maybe just by reminding our listeners how they can find you and your various online endeavors.
Thank you. Well, I'm on Facebook, Patricia Tallman page. You can email me at pattallmannewsletter@gmail.com. Instagram at patriciatallman.rocks. That was actually an email I had for a while, so I just kept it. I thought .rocks, kind of like that. And then b5events.com. Please join us there. See what we've got coming up. You can get on our newsletter, and I'll shoot you an email when we have another guest booked.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you can take part of the early bird. Like, the early bird's long gone by now, but for the next event when Claudia's on, you can save a few bucks, $10 or so on the early bird. So do get on that list. But meanwhile, buy a ticket to Tom Savini, you guys. I really appreciate it. It'd be great.
Yep. So that's the 19th, guys. And if you check out the show notes, there'll be clickable links for all of those. So thanks again, Pat. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Mike. I'll be in touch. I really appreciate it so much. Thanks, everybody.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you for being here.